Men, here's something female psychology makes brutally clear. Most women don't cheat suddenly or impulsively out of nowhere. They build a story first, construct a narrative, create a justification framework that makes the betrayal feel acceptable or even necessary. Today, I'll expose 8 specific phrases women consistently use to justify cheating before it actually happens, so you can catch the betrayal in its early stages before it destroys you. Before we dive in, hit subscribe, smash that like button, and hit the hype by dropping a comment if you've ever heard one of these phrases and felt your gut twist with discomfort but ignored that instinct. Your story might save another man from making the same mistake. Phrase 1. Everyone flirts, it's harmless. This is typically one of the first ways she begins normalizing boundary-breaking behavior in the relationship. When you hear this phrase, she's actively working to lower your defenses by painting flirtation as completely normal, universal, meaningless behavior that everyone engages in regardless of relationship status. She frames it as harmless fun, as innocent social interaction, as something so commonplace that objecting to it would make you seem insecure or controlling. Female psychology reveals what's really happening here. By redefining where the line is, by moving the boundary of acceptable behavior, she mentally prepares herself to cross that line without experiencing the full weight of guilt that would normally accompany such actions. If flirting is harmless, and everyone does it, then she's not really doing anything wrong when she flirts with that coworker, that guy at the gym, that friend who's been messaging her increasingly often. The translation of this phrase is straightforward. She's already flirting with someone specific, and she's trying to make you accept it as normal before it escalates into something more. She needs you to agree that flirting means nothing, so that when you eventually discover flirty texts or observe flirty behavior, you won't be able to object without her throwing your previous acceptance back at you. This phrase establishes plausible deniability for behavior that's already occurring and creates a foundation for the argument that whatever happens next isn't really cheating because you both agreed flirting was harmless. Watch for this phrase, especially if it comes up seemingly out of nowhere, if she brings it up as a general topic without any obvious trigger, or if she becomes defensive when you suggest that flirting while in a relationship crosses boundaries. The defensiveness reveals that she has personal investment in this interpretation, because she's currently engaging in behavior she needs you to accept as innocent. Phrase 2. We've grown apart. When this phrase starts appearing in conversations, pay very close attention to the context and frequency. This phrase isn't about identifying a problem so you can work together to fix it. It's about establishing emotional and psychological distance as a pre-justification for future betrayal. By declaring that you've grown apart, that the connection isn't what it used to be, that you're living separate lives under the same roof, she gives herself internal permission to seek emotional or physical closeness elsewhere. The psychological mechanism here is creating a mental setup that goes something like this. I'm not really cheating because we were already disconnected. The relationship was already over emotionally, even if we hadn't officially ended it. I was just finding with someone else what I wasn't getting from him anymore. This narrative allows her to reframe cheating not as betrayal, but as a natural consequence of an already failed relationship that just hadn't been formally ended yet. Notice whether she's actually trying to close the distance she claims exists, or if she's simply stating it as fact and moving on. If she mentions growing apart but shows no interest in couples counseling, in having deeper conversations, in spending more quality time together, in addressing specific issues that created the distance, then she's not diagnosing a problem she wants to solve. She's establishing a narrative that justifies the solution she's already considering: finding connection with someone else. If you hear this phrase often, if it becomes a recurring theme in how she describes your relationship, she's actively laying the groundwork to justify stepping out. She's building a story where her cheating becomes understandable, even inevitable, given how disconnected you two had become. The phrase serves to absolve her of responsibility by suggesting the relationship was already dead, so anything she does with someone else isn't really cheating. It's just moving on from something that was already over. Phrase 3, I deserve to be happy. This phrase functions as a powerful self-justification mechanism that reframes fundamentally selfish and betrayal-based behavior as legitimate self-care and personal empowerment. Female psychology research shows that people preparing to cheat often recast their selfish desires and boundary-breaking behavior as taking care of themselves, prioritizing their own happiness, refusing to settle, and claiming what they deserve. It transforms, I want to do something that will hurt my partner, into, I'm just taking care of my own needs, which is much easier to live with psychologically. The phrase taps into modern cultural narratives about self-worth, self-love, and refusing to accept less than you deserve. These are generally positive concepts, but they can be weaponized to justify almost any behavior by framing it as self-advocacy. When she says, I deserve to be happy, she's rarely talking about general life satisfaction or pursuing legitimate personal growth. She's validating her desire to chase something or someone new, regardless of the commitment she made to you. It's a way of saying that her happiness trumps all other considerations. Your feelings, the promises she made, the commitment you built together, the consequences of her actions. Once she starts regularly invoking her right to happiness, as though it exists in isolation from her responsibilities and choices, she's mentally preparing to do something she knows will hurt you, but that she's determined to justify as necessary for her well-being. Listen for this phrase, especially in contexts where she's discussing attention from other men, her frustrations with the relationship, or her desires for things that would require breaking your commitment. The phrase becomes particularly concerning when paired with other justification language because it reveals she's building a comprehensive narrative where cheating becomes not just acceptable, but actually virtuous, an act of self-respect rather than betrayal. Phrase 4, you don't pay attention to me anymore. This represents a classic blame shift tactic that reframes potential or actual cheating as fundamentally your fault before the betrayal even happens or is discovered. Instead of addressing issues directly through clear communication, instead of saying specifically what attention she needs and giving you the opportunity to provide it, she sets up a narrative where you pushed her into someone else's arms through your neglect and inattention. Female psychology on relationship justification shows us that shifting accountability before betrayal occurs serves a crucial function. It reduces guilt. If she can convince herself, and potentially you, that her cheating was caused by your failure to meet her needs, then she's not the villain in the story. You are. She becomes the victim of your neglect who simply found comfort and attention elsewhere when you stopped providing it. This narrative makes the betrayal feel justified, even inevitable, rather than a deliberate choice she made to break trust. Watch the timing and context of this phrase carefully. If it appears suddenly and repeatedly, without corresponding efforts on her part to specify what kind of attention she needs, or to work with you on improving connection, it's a major red flag that she's building a reason to cheat or justify cheating she's already engaged in. The vagueness of the complaint, you don't pay attention, makes it almost impossible to address because what constitutes sufficient attention is never defined, and no amount of increased attention will be acknowledged as enough because the complaint isn't really meant to be solved. The phrase also serves to make you doubt yourself and your perceptions. Maybe you haven't been attentive enough. Maybe you have been taking her for granted. Maybe this is your fault. This self-doubt makes you less likely to trust your instincts when other signs of cheating appear, because you're already primed to believe you drove her to it through your failures. Phrase 5, I'm not like other women, I just need freedom. This phrase deserves careful analysis because it disguises justification for secrecy and boundary breaking as a personality trait or legitimate need for independence, The issue here isn't independence itself. Healthy relationships absolutely should include individual autonomy, separate friendships, personal time, and individual pursuits. The issue is the preemptive defensive framing that positions any questions or concerns about her activities as attacks on her fundamental nature. What she's actually communicating with this phrase is not a request for healthy independence. She's asking for fewer questions, less accountability, and reduced scrutiny when she starts disappearing. When new people appear in her life, when her schedule becomes inconsistent, when her explanations don't quite add up. By framing it as, "I'm just not like other women who need constant contact," or "I'm not the type who has to report where I am all the time," she attempts to make normal relationship transparency seem clingy or controlling. Psychology insight reveals that people actively seeking or preparing to cheat will often rebrand secrecy and lack of accountability as independence to avoid scrutiny and questions. They need freedom not from genuine constraint, but from the normal expectations of openness and honesty that exist in committed relationships. This phrase is often followed shortly by increased solo outings, new friends whose details remain vague, more time away from home without clear explanations, and irritation when you ask basic questions about her activities. Pay attention to whether this stated need for freedom is consistent with her previous personality, or if it's a new characteristic emerging suddenly. If she never needed this level of independence before, if she used to be happy sharing her day and her plans with you, if she previously enjoyed couple time and didn't emphasize her need for space, then this transformation isn't personal growth. It's preparation for activities she knows you wouldn't approve of if you knew the full truth. Phrase 6. We're still young, we should explore life. This phrase sounds philosophical, mature, and growth-oriented on the surface, but often masks fundamentally selfish intent and provides justification for betraying commitment. It reframes cheating as a natural, even healthy part of life experience, rather than a betrayal of trust. The underlying message is that commitment, monogamy, and loyalty at your current life stage are somehow unnatural constraints that prevent personal growth and life experience. What makes this phrase particularly insidious is that it contains a kernel of truth. People should grow, experience life, and not feel trapped. But she's deliberately conflating personal growth with sexual and romantic exploration outside the relationship. She's suggesting that staying faithful to you is somehow limiting her life experience, that she can't fully live or discover herself while honoring the commitment she made to you. The phrase works to ease her conscience by suggesting that commitment at this stage of life is inherently problematic, that you're both too young to have settled down, that exploring other options isn't betrayal, but rather appropriate behavior for people your age. It creates a framework where her cheating becomes not wrong, but actually developmentally appropriate. She's just doing what people at this life stage should do. If this phrase appears suddenly out of nowhere, especially if it's accompanied by references to friends who are single and dating, to experiences she feels she's missing, to things she wants to try, it's a major red flag indicating she's already thinking seriously about exploring other options. The "we" in the phrase is often deceptive. She might frame it as something you should both want, but really she's the only one thinking this way and trying to make her desires seem universal or mutual. Phrase 7. It's not like I'm doing anything wrong. This defensive phrase typically appears when she's already pushing boundaries, emotionally, physically, or both, and you've noticed or questioned her behavior. It's designed to accomplish two things simultaneously: silence your concerns and redefine what constitutes cheating so she can continue her current behavior unchecked. The statement itself is a form of gaslighting that positions your legitimate concerns as unfounded suspicion or insecurity. Psychology of minimizing language shows that people use phrases like this to reduce both internal guilt and external pushback. By declaring that nothing wrong is happening, She's trying to convince herself as much as you. If she can get you to agree that her behavior is fine, that your concerns are overreactions, that you're being paranoid or controlling, then she can continue escalating her boundary-breaking behavior without the friction of your objections or her own guilty conscience. Here's the crucial truth. If she genuinely wasn't doing anything wrong, she wouldn't need to defend herself. Innocent people don't typically make unprompted declarations about how they're not doing anything wrong. That defensive statement appears specifically because on some level she knows her behavior is problematic, and she's trying to preemptively shut down the conversation before you can articulate why it concerns you. Listen to what prompts this phrase. Does it come up when you ask about a new friend? When you notice her texting constantly? When you mention that she's been distant? When you observe that she's dressing differently or leaving the house more often? The contexts that trigger this defensive response reveal exactly what behavior she's trying to protect from scrutiny. The more defensive she becomes, the more likely it is that nothing wrong is actually something very wrong indeed. Phrase 8. Maybe we should take a break. This phrase represents the final stage in the justification progression, a soft launch into single life while still maintaining you as a safety net and backup option. When you hear this, understand that it's rarely a genuine suggestion for temporary space to work on individual issues with the intention of reuniting stronger. Taking a break is overwhelmingly code for, I want to try someone else without carrying the label or guilt of cheating, and if it doesn't work out, I want the option to come back to you. The genius of this phrase from a psychological manipulation standpoint is that it allows her to explore other relationships, particularly the one she's already emotionally or physically invested in. While technically not being a cheater because you were on a break, it provides moral and social cover for behavior that would otherwise be unequivocally recognized as infidelity. She gets to test drive a new relationship while keeping you waiting, hoping, and available if the new situation doesn't work out as planned. Once this phrase is said, understand that the decision is often already made. She's emotionally gone and actively seeking validation elsewhere, whether or not the physical cheating has occurred yet. In psychology, this is called preemptive exit framing, setting the stage for betrayal without the guilt, creating distance before officially leaving, and establishing a narrative where the relationship ended before the new one began, so she can avoid the social stigma and personal guilt of cheating. Watch for what happens after the suggestion is made. Does she immediately seem happier and more energized? Does she start going out more, dressing up, being secretive about her phone? Does she seem relieved rather than sad about the prospect of time apart? These reactions reveal that the break isn't about missing you or working on herself. It's about freedom to pursue someone else without consequence. Very often, the person she wants to explore things with is already identified and waiting. Female psychology demonstrates clearly that cheating rarely starts with a physical action. It starts with a story she tells herself to make betrayal feel justified, acceptable, even necessary. These 8 phrases represent the building blocks of that justification narrative. Each one serves to minimize her guilt, shift blame to you, reframe betrayal as personal growth or self-care, and prepare both of you for the infidelity that's either already happening or about to happen. When you hear these phrases, especially multiple ones over time, you're not witnessing random relationship communication. You're watching someone construct a psychological framework that will allow her to cheat while maintaining her self-image as a good person, and potentially maintaining your sympathy as someone who was driven to it by circumstances, rather than making a deliberate choice to betray trust.